Okay,
So,
all right.
I mean,
Kelly's right on it. That's great. Okay,
it might need a quick clarification. Now, are we at 9
yes,
members because we have one person that's not on?
yes,
And so
9
now the
officially.
question is the quorum calculated based on the official capacity, the official membership of the committee, or is it calculated on? I kind of think it probably is.
How about on
I-
active, how about on active members?
You see, I think it's the
I
number of
think
seats.
the actual
What do you
definition
think,
of official
John?
voting members. You need 50% minimum of the voting members of the committee. And since
Yeah.
there's
Well, I
a
hate to
number in the
say it,
committee,
but
that means you have to be over 50%. But it's
Yeah, I
voting
mean,
members, not whether you're actually, show up regularly. It's whether you're a voting member.
and I hate to
Right.
say it, but my math background tells me 9.5, which is half, would really be 10.
5. You need 5 is what you need.
Yeah, we only have, normally we have 10, John, so we've determined
No.
we need 6 for a quorum. But since
Right.
one
Well,
resigned,
except with 10, 5 is a voting quorum because it's 50%.
That's true.
50% or more.
well, we've been under the working rules all summer. We had a couple of
Yeah.
cases where we didn't have a quorum because we couldn't get the 6th. But we
Oh.
did have 5, and we were told we did not have a quorum by somebody
Yeah.
from the city.
Okay, well, then I've got it wrong, I guess.
Well, I'm saying is what I've heard. It was
But
passed on
if you
through.
have a member, a non-existent member of the committee, is that why you have 9? Because somebody's not appointed?
Right. They'll be
That's the
appointed.
current
Yeah.
situation, and that's where I have a question. I'm just,
Yeah, then at the moment you have 9 voting members, and so therefore the quorum is 5.
Yeah, it's actually 4.5, so 5. Yep.
Yeah.
So we're good.
Exactly.
Okay.
in that case, we will proceed in good faith on that understanding.
Okay. Let's see. Let's have a call to order. And then do we have an approval of the previous minutes? No,
Schaefer moves approval.
I should have asked, do we have any proposed amendments?
Yeah.
Well, that comes after you have a
Right.
motion.
Well,
Oh, does it?
It-
Okay.
well,
You always
I'm
have to
learning
have a
these
motion, a
Robert's-
second,
Just-
and then you discuss.
Yeah,
just a
John, this is the problem.
clarification. Yeah. Do you want to do it, Dick?
Okay, Lisa started this thing back when she was chair, and she felt that the newer Robert Rules of Orders allowed for a tacit approval of the minutes that were distributed if there were no changes. So she didn't
Right.
want us to ask for a motion to approve.
Okay.
So what we've been doing is saying if nobody has any amendments, which we then have to approve,
Right.
then the chair is saying, since there are no amendments being offered, then the minutes are approved. That's how we have agreed.
That's correct. And to go to Robert's rules, actually, you don't call them approved. They're accepted as submitted.
Oh,
Because
okay.
you can't, it's a fact of minutes are a factual thing. And
Yeah.
so therefore, the presumption is you accept the minutes as submitted.
Right.
And
Perfect,
therefore, yes, you don't need a motion if nobody objects to what's in the minutes.
perfect.
Okay.
Yep,
Okay,
exactly.
I appreciate that. I'm learning Robert's rules, so I appreciate that. Okay.
So then the questions are, let's ask the question, fully and formally address it. Are there any corrections or amendments to the minutes as submitted?
None by me.
I didn't hear any.
Robert has his hand up.
No, he's public
He's
citizen.
Oh, okay, sorry, but he's still.
No voting.
So
That's all right. We know Robert's
Okay.
are, okay.
it's accepted.
Okay, accepted as submitted.
Thank you, that's perfect.
I like it. Okay.
Perfect.
All right, next we will move on to public comments. Robert, you're up.
Thank you. Thank you, Christy. Thank you, committee. Good evening. My name is Robert Owen. I live at 1311 Middleton Street. I am commenting on 2 proposed sustainable purchasing policy implementation provisions, one relating to embedded carbon and a second relating to decarbonization, electrification of city buildings. As to embedded carbon, what the city needs to do is to hire an experienced green building architect or designer to make sure the city's new buildings have low embedded carbon. The expert needs to be up to date because the green building technology is changing rapidly. But it's a simple situation. Hire an expert and they can take care of minimizing the city's embedded carbon. As to decarbonization, electrification of existing buildings, the city needs up-to-date expertise also. HVAC expertise, including expertise with geothermal and air source heat pumps. And city departments need to heed and follow the advice of the HVAC expert. I have suggested some language to accomplish building decarbonization, electrification. The drafting committee has basically declined to write an IP provision for buildings. That's an abdication of responsibility. It's analogous to the oil and gas industry refusing to agree to a phase-out date for their fossil fuel products at COP28. I'm not sure who or what the reluctant drafters are afraid of. They do need to finish the job, however, bearing in mind that the Common Council set the goals in 2018, and an HVAC expert will advise the city on how to meet them. All the city staff has to do is to follow the expert's recommendation. Is that too much to ask the city staff? I don't think so. I think it's time for this committee to stop enabling uninformed staff resistance to city building decarbonization. We need to stop burning natural gas in city buildings soon, whether or not the oil and gas industry or the staff likes it. This is the stark message from Earth's increasingly overheated atmosphere. Please get with it and write a building decarbonization IP section, MSC. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. Okay. So next we will move on to the staff report. Kelly, if you don't mind, I'm just going to give a quick update first on the new potential sustainability committee member. So council will vote tomorrow night on sustainability committee member that I put forward, a suggestion. This person's name is Lynn Wilson, and he has actually helped Bill Gates with making a classroom educational curriculum for his climate book. So Lynn is a communicator and a visual information designer. So I think he would really complement our committee, especially with our communication goals. But, you know, specifically to you, John, he is up for a vote tomorrow night. So, and then if that is approved, if his candidacy is approved, then he will be a formal committee member next month at our next meeting. The next thing I will just quickly say now that Deb's on is I have a conflict that just came up at 7, in which should take 15 minutes. So I may jump off and Kermit will take over to convene when I'm gone. So if you see me just jump off at 7, I'll be back. Okay, thank you. So next, on to Kelly. So who has questions or, oh, and I also want to say, we talked about this right before the meeting. We are going to try to keep discussion light tonight and keep this at an hour max if possible. So that is our goal, hour max. If we get done before, we get points for every minute and I'll figure out a prize. So, you know, who has questions, comments, feedback for Kelly on her really helpful staff report? Dick?
Yes. On number 2, it's interesting that there was a pretty big article in the paper, I don't know, a couple weeks ago, maybe, about the same problem, Kelly, that you identified here, where the utilities do not want 1 meter basically in an apartment complex, which makes it efficient to then keep track of the energy produced by the solar panels on the roof. And rather than have 5 or 6, you know, whatever the number of units are that are taking advantage of this, if the apartment, it seems to me that the apartment owner ought to be the one that would say, yes, we are willing to distribute the costs or absorb the costs and put it in the rent or somehow. But what you've identified is the problem that utility still wants each unit individually metered. So can you just go through this again a little bit more, even though you've written it out quite well, just to highlight the issues and challenges and where you think this is going?
Yeah, this is the problem across Wisconsin right now, that everyone's trying to figure out how to do solar on multifamily apartment buildings with multiple renters. And I don't understand the ins and outs of the issues. I'm meeting with MG&E the first week of January to talk about EV charging. And I want to talk to them also about this issue, just so I understand it, or even understand it from their position. There are some things on their end that they're having to comply to certain codes themselves. And then the city of Middleton has its own, it has to make sure the project complies with building codes, state building codes. And MGE also has codes through the PSC for how utilities offer services. So I don't know where those codes and everything stop and where the utilities just not wanting to do this because it's new or it presents a challenge for them begins. I want to be clear on that when I talk to them, but I do know that they really push back on doing a single meter in multifamily. And so it makes a lot of these projects really difficult, because then you have to think about separating everything out, and it adds cost. And what we've run into in Lakeview is that if they did split out all the systems, it may then push the project over the allowable number of services that MGE could bring onto the site. And it would also then create a code problem from the city of Middleton standpoint, because they would have to do electrical panel upgrades in every single unit. And that would then conflict with the spacing of the washer and dryers to the electrical panels. As it is now, it complies. But if they do an upgrade, then it wouldn't comply. So it's sort of, they hit this roadblock. And so we had a meeting with City of Middleton Inspection and Elevate Energy and WHPC. They're the partners on this project. And Wisconsin Housing Preservation Corps owns the building. So there may be a workaround, because unlike a lot of multifamily that is not subsidized, this particular building is subsidized. And so the owner pays the heating bill as just one bill. So in that sense, they're going to see if there's a workaround in that case when they speak to MG&E about this. But there's been just a lot of back and forth. And it's something that we need to figure out. I think, people in Madison, they're trying to figure this out as well. So it just really highlights to me how there's challenges with solar and multifamily, and it's not just an easy fix. And I'm worried that, the people who can afford solar will adopt it during this period of time when there's all this federal funding. And then renters who don't have the agency or don't have the ability to have solar because they don't have ownership, and the building owners don't have enough money perhaps, and there's no incentive for them to necessarily put solar on if the renters are paying the electricity bill. So it's going to leave out the most energy burdened people in every community, and it's an equity issue. So we do need to solve it.
Just a quick follow-up and then I'll free up. I know Voss House, we looked at possibility of solar on their roof. They have 63 or so units. The roofs are pretty much facing south. So there was a lot of ideas that we could really benefit from this kind of project there. But with so many units there, I mean, you're looking at an apartment unit with 4 units, or in this case, 6, I guess. That seems like a lot, but if we're really looking at bigger complexes, it's even more daunting. So this newspaper article, did you happen to see it about, it was challenged by someplace up
It was,
Chippewa Falls or Eau Claire or somewhere up that way? Kermit, you want to?
I was just saying, Kelly linked it in her report. The Cap Times article, I believe, is the same one you're
Yeah.
talking about.
You can see it right here, I think. If you click on it in your online, you can read it.
So-
It's
Okay.
Kelly's on top of it as usual, Dick. What can we say?
there's other articles about this as well. And I think there's multiple articles about this particular project actually in River Falls. So it is something, I think it's kind of technical and policy code heavy, but it's something to at least have a basic knowledge of, I think, because it's going to be a challenge.
Mhm, mhm.
Yeah, I mean, it just feels like MG&E or the utilities are the crux of a lot of our problems. Those street lights is another example. And microgrids, I mean, this is something I really feel is the really big fruit to capture here of all these flat rooftops over in the business park that are totally open to the sun. We've got to figure out a way to make a microgrid system work or get these all in so everybody's feeling like that they're making something out of it and benefiting, and utilities back to the problem of preventing them. And I'm wondering if the city attorney, I think you're working with Matt Frank on this, and I know him well from the DNR. I'm wondering if the city attorney has done any looking into all these issues about utilities and things that have to be resolved that might make a case for the PSC or whatever.
Yeah, our city attorney is Matt Fleming, but I did work with Matt Frank from the same firm for the MG rate case, and he is really knowledgeable about this stuff. So he'd be a good person to reach out to.
Yeah, I know from the city council, they've authorized that the city go after these approved or these things that MG&E and others want to do to stop paying people, individuals feeding electricity back to the grid. So I know that there's some work going on.
Yeah.
And it seems from my perspective that MG&E just likes putting roadblocks. They don't want the solar to happen, so they keep finding little ways, subtle ways
Yeah.
to just make it sticky. And I don't know. It's a
And-
systemic problem. I don't think this is
Mhm.
I don't know that it's going to be a simple, easy one-off fix for this one.
We are
Okay,
really
go ahead.
working on this in the Wisconsin Local Government Climate Coalition. And,
Mhm.
all the sustainability directors and city staff in other communities are really aware of this. So
Yeah.
we have a good infrastructure of knowledgeable people who are trying to work on this, but
Good.
it takes a long time.
Mhm.
Kermit, did you have a comment?
I had a couple of questions or quick comments, and just as to the discussion we were just having, I don't know if I recall seeing it in the report, but Kelly, I believe there's an update on the PSC case that Middleton was an intervener for.
Yeah.
And the good news is that particular net metering issue was decided against MG&E's favor. And so there count a win on the scorecard.
Yeah, that's
for
good.
the
I hadn't heard
forces
that,
of
but we'll maybe hear it
justice.
tomorrow at council.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was
Yeah.
big news.
Yeah, so that happened a little bit ago anyways.
Good.
So let's see, a couple of, number 8, you're talking about EV charging interfaces, and again, as for the overall report, keep on kicking butt, Kelly. I appreciate all you're doing. Related to EV charging infrastructure, is there any consideration for putting in like I don't know what you'd call it, a charging space protection ordinance? Basically, right now, to my knowledge, there's nothing that keeps people from just saying, I see a parking space, I'm going to park here, and blocking out people who actually have EVs. And I don't know whether this is something that we can add to our action list, or maybe John can think about as far as.
It's an interesting question. Yeah, I don't.
And
You
I
know.
don't, I'm not going to ask for, detailed discussion, but again, my understanding, and I ran into it, I think at least once, where I was like, I need to charge my Volt and all the spaces are plugged in, and this is, anyways, technical issues, and I was told there was nothing the police could do about it if it was blocked. So
Mhm.
I think we might want to pursue that.
Okay.
You-
Let's see, an
Kermit,
item,
Oh, can I comment on that quick? You know what happened to me the other day? I was with one of my kids, and I won't incriminate them by saying which one. Actually, I don't remember, but we were at a place where there was no parking except for the EV charging spot. And I was in my EV and the kid said, "Oh, you can park there." And I said, "No, I don't need to charge.
Charging.
I'm not going to park." There's no, and so we have that too. If you have an
Yes.
EV, it doesn't mean you still get to park there. You have to be charging.
good point, good point. Yeah, it's like those fake handicap cards, just because you have an EV, if you're not needing it. Anyways, item 12, let's see, something caught my eye there. I was just gonna follow. Okay, I'm sorry. I think this is more about the OEI planning grants. You mentioned a bunch of different grants, and I'm just wondering whether you were able to, Kelly, if you were able to put in a referral or a plug with the school board or the school staff about their participation in that.
Yeah, I had about an hour-long conversation with Marnie Ginsburg last night about the school sustainability work, and I did talk to her about those grants and the deadline and how I'd be willing to, share all of our grants that we've written with them. We've written planning grants, 2 planning grants now that we received, so they could use that as a template. If they wanted to.
Okay.
I don't know what their timing is about putting out their RFP and hiring the firm. I know with those grants, you can't start the work and then retroactively fund them. So the timing would have to work. But
Yeah.
I talked to her about that, so at least they know that there is that timeline.
Good. Okay. Okay. And for what it's worth, don't forget to add that kind of ambassador work, bridge building, and then, cheerleading for other groups to your report, because that counts too. And I think, let's see, 13B, I was just going to offer a comment regarding the language where I believe you emphasize the fact that, well, demand is high and that's the problem.
Kermit, one sec. Deb, do you have something that pertained to the last topic that Kermit brought up, or is it different? Because we can stick with that. Oh, you're on mute. We could stick with that.
When Kermit's finished, I
Okay,
just
okay.
had a question.
Okay, good. Thank you. Kermit, go ahead.
Okay, thanks. Yeah. The language as you use it emphasize the fact that demand is high and that's the problem, why things are expensive. And I think there's been some important framing of that issue and some research. The author that brought us Evicted, and I think also Poverty Made in America, is the supply is the problem. There isn't enough affordable housing, period. I mean, the demand exists and overwhelms the supply. And so it's an important nuance, I think, because it's not that people are clamoring to get into a particular place, but that we as a society and we as an economy have not provided affordable housing. And there's some question as to whether the economy can provide it without it becoming a social and governmental project, which to some extent we're seeing start to happen. And let's see, the last thing I was noticing, you had an event coming up about the EV bill hearing. Is there anything, I'm going, oh, that's the 19th. Good, we have time. Wait, no, that's tomorrow. Can you say more about what's happening? Is there anything we can do on short notice to help push on that agenda item?
Well, the Wisconsin Local Government Climate Coalition is providing testimony, as is Eau Claire County, City of Madison, and I think there was Milwaukee. There was one other entity, I can't remember, that's part of the WLGCC. So there will be testimony presented. I didn't feel like I was prepared to give testimony as a smaller community, and I feel like I'm fairly covered by the WLGCC representation. So this was just brought up when I wrote the report, so sort of last minute on Friday. So I don't know. I'm hoping that we'll get an update from all those parties soon after the testimony. They have briefed everyone on the bills themselves. The bills are not perfect. We wish they were different in certain ways, but we absolutely need them to pass in order to be able to receive the federal dollars that will put charging infrastructure along our major highway corridors. So it's sort of we have to get them passed, but then we hope to change them and improve them over the next few years.
Okay, okay. So in that case, there really isn't a call for any of us to try to show up at the hearing or submit any kind of testimony or letter of support or opposition.
If you can, I haven't looked at that. I haven't looked online at the legislative website to see if they're accepting public comments, but I mean, that is never hurt. And I think you might be able to submit those over the internet, but I'm not sure. I can't remember exactly how that works.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I did notice that the testimony you appended to the packet by the Wisconsin Local Government Climate Coalition indicated that they were offering just information only. They weren't speaking for or against the bill, which I found intriguing, like as if they're trying to lobby for the legislation for the bill to be changed.
Yeah, they're not allowed
or is
to
that
lobby.
Okay.
So they have to walk a really fine line just because they're forced to.
Okay, I wasn't sure whether that was it or okay. Okay. So Christy has stepped away for her conflict. I am picking up the chair or sitting in the chair now as the chair. And Deb, your questions, comments.
Okay, this is from number 5. You had stated in there that LED light bulbs would be going to the owners. Those are the ones that we had purchased, correct?
Yes.
So can we, Dick and I, be part of that discussion, maybe having a meeting in January with whoever's involved, and then set up a way of getting those light bulbs to the properties?
Yeah, I meet with Elevate every Wednesday at either 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock. I'm meeting with John this Wednesday at 3 o'clock, which you could jump on that meeting, or we could do it the first week in January on Wednesday. Either one.
Okay, we can do that probably over internet or something. I mean, email.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And Dick, do you have something additional?
Yeah, actually, that was exactly the question I wanted to ask, but I just want a clarification. Kelly, can you set up a meeting where it's known that we will be there tomorrow or 2 days? I might be able to make it, but maybe Deb and I need to go over our inventory a little bit better. And I would prefer, I guess, if it's not too late, to do a meeting, say, not right after the 1st, but say the 2nd week in January. Can you just set it up that we would be invited and be able to talk to the right people about doing this?
Yeah.
I feel like I'm asking you to set the meeting up because I'm free, and Deb and I have talked about this earlier today. that we both could meet probably most any time in January. So a 2:30 or 3 o'clock on a Wednesday afternoon would be fine. I can work with that.
Okay, yeah, I can forward you the invite.
Yeah, and this would be for a specific day, like.
Yep, it
this,
would be, yeah, it would be for either the first
How
or
about
second.
how about the second Wednesday
Okay.
in January? Deb, is that okay with you?
I can check my calendar, just, yeah.
Okay, any other questions or comments regarding the staff report?
Just want to say it's a very comprehensive report, Kelly. I know it must take a lot of time to prepare all this detail, and I appreciate all the work that it takes and that the work you're doing on this stuff.
I think it'll be good to have
Yeah.
a record of it so that, you know,
Yep.
future employees, future committee members, if they really want to see what happened on an issue, they can follow it month to month.
Mm-hmm.
I just wanted to
Indeed.
say thanks for including the links, because it's kind of nice. Like I
Mhm.
read the link to the the article about, lead stuff. So that is, I think that's helpful. So thank you. Mhm.
Okay, and I see John with his hand up now.
Yeah, I just want to concur with Kelly said. Thank you so much for a very detailed report. I didn't know 90% of this, so now I'm 9 times smarter than I was before. And thank you very much. It's great. So, beautiful job.
And John, if you ever see anything that stands out to you, feel free to mention it when I think alders
Yep.
give their report back about their committees. Any way we
Yeah.
can communicate with larger council will be helpful.
Yeah, well, and I'm paying attention to this thing about the charging, the infrastructure thing. That's intriguing to me because you see signs that says "Do not park here unless you're charging," but it's like crossing a yellow line on the road. There's no law that says you can't cross on a yellow line. We just hope that you pay attention to the yellow lines and say, "I'm not supposed to cross them." So we'll see. I'll look into this. I'm interested about that.
Yeah,
But yes,
John,
thank you.
Cool.
on that topic, real quick, I am meeting with MGE the first week in January to talk about that exact issue because HGA Engineering, one of their engineers reached out to me and MG&E and said that he was concerned that there maybe weren't enough chargers at Terrace Avenue for the public because the spots were always full. And
Yeah.
there was one particular driver, I think, that was just parking there every day. And so they finally found the driver and had a conversation with them and said, could you please only park there when you're charging, which shouldn't be every day because it's a electric vehicle. It'd probably only be once a week or something. So
Sure.
Anyway, so we're going to have that conversation, and if you'd like to join, feel free. I can let you know when that.
Yeah, let me know when you're doing it. My afternoons are tied up with bus driving, but
Okay.
and then those kids are important too, so that's
Yep.
yeah, I would be interested in this.
Okay, thanks, John.
Yeah.
And again, put in a good plug, a good word for us in the council meetings about just all the great stuff sustainability is
I
doing.
will. I'm on your team, This has to be an agenda item, but I'm on your team.
Yeah, just a quick
Dick.
follow-up. How about signage on these places that say no parking unless you are charging or something, I mean, if it's a question of not being explicit, hey, we don't want you to park here just because you own an EV. You have to be charging or you will be ticketed, or nothing maybe that draconian, but that's what basically we want people to get the idea that and it's an education thing, it sounds like.
Man, I think at least the ones I know on Terrace, the signage is there, but nobody seems to follow the signage. It's like a handicap spot. You may say, well, I'm handicapped, but I don't really need, I'm going to be there for 4 hours, but I have the sticker, so therefore it's okay to just park there. And there's got to be a little more teeth, I think, in this, because we've seen all this recent press about non-functional machines and not enough machines and derailing the potential for electric vehicles. And I think this is a hot button item, particularly with all the traffic and cars we have coming downtown. And then that the Terrace Avenue lot is increasingly filling up, and so.
Well, I might just say your handicap point. Hey, if you're parked in a handicap spot and you don't have a handicap sticker or a sign or a license plate, you can get ticketed.
Right,
And the same would be here. If you're parked in an EV thing,
Yeah.
if we have it appropriately
Right.
signed, you should, and you're not plugged in, then you could potentially get a ticket.
yeah, the thing is, I don't think there's a state law against it, so it'd have to be a local ordinance.
Right,
And if there's going to be state legislation on this, then it would behoove us to kind of figure out what, if anything, anybody's doing about this.
Right.
And then find maybe an appropriate way to move forward on it.
exactly. Okay.
Yeah, Kelly, keep me in the loop.
And that concludes our staff report discussion. Next item on the agenda is Sustainable Purchasing Policy Implementation Plan Update. Billed as discussion only. I am going to ask who was on deck to brief us and give us that discussion start. Is that Kelly or Laura maybe, or who?
Well, I
You're
think,
both there. So go ahead, Kelly.
I was going to say, I think Laura would be a great person to give the update, but we did meet today with Parks and Rec Director Kylie Shearer and talked about it. And so, and it was, I thought there was some great feedback to begin with. And I think, we already now have an idea how the meetings might go and, some new ideas. So I'll let Laura talk about it.
Yeah, so it was very helpful. We had her kind of go through the, like you said, the IP plan as written. It gave us some feedback onto how it's being received, at least from staff level. And some of the things that I learned is that actually she's from Parks and Recreation. They're doing more than you might imagine already. And that it is like one of our goals was to embed it into the culture, and sustainability actually is on their radar, and she is thinking about it. And I think there's almost kind of two parallels. It's like, we just don't know it. So it might be like a communication thing. Now that we have a new communication person, there was internal communication, like some of these staff and stuff are doing things we don't know. And that was part of it. Another thing was, where do we start? It's like, she was actually quite receptive to it. But with a place like Parks and Recreation, I mean, her department covered everything, like all of the different categories that we had listed. And so we started thinking maybe the best thing to do is to kind of put it or frame it or organize it into like a 3-year plan. Like, okay, year 1, let's basically do an audit, a baseline. What is everything you buy? Let's keep it focused on purchasing, because our conversation branched out a little bit from that, because once you start talking about purchasing, then you start talking about behavior, using things and stuff like that. And so maybe what we need to do is do an audit, everything that each department actually purchases, identify that, and then identify, like, do an inventory too. Where are we at? Let's get that baseline starting point. And another thing that came up was, she goes, I don't even know where to, let's say I want to buy paper towels or whatever that are better than what we're doing. I don't even know where to search for that. And what it came down to is, Kelly said, well, I actually know a lot of that. And so it might be, she was concerned that what if I have a list of like 300 things that I'm supposed to research, how do I do that? And it's like, well, you have this resource that could tell you, direct you, and things like that. And then also to kind of walk her through like the big purchases. Like we started talking about fleets and, what happens when equipment runs out, and, switching to something more sustainable. And so I think what kind of came from that is, on the plus side, the thinking is already there. Like, she talked a little bit, just a random example we gave was saltwater pools or something as opposed to chlorine. And the thinking when she was explaining the decision and stuff was already there. So that was good. The concern was operational costs. So one of the questions was, well, what if the new, let's say, whether it's an EV or whether it's something else that's more for the environment, that would be good for the environment, but it increases the operational costs of my department. What do we do? And so we had a good conversation with that. So just hearing what the staff are thinking, what they're concerned about, that they are working on it. I think we have a way or an idea of how to better organize and frame this. She said that, what we gave them, that part was not that hard to understand. That was fine. She was going to go into it a little bit deeper. I'm like, is there something that how does this need to be written? Do you need more instruction, less instruction? What do you want? But it was very good to hear any concerns or anxieties. It was very good to hear that actually they're thinking about it already. So that's good. And it's a matter of organizing the measurement. How do we do that? What do you want as our annual report? And how do we make this thing happen? And that's where the three of us kind of thought, well, maybe we need to do this. Year 1, let's get this done. Year 2, let's get this done. Year 3, let's get this done. Assess and go from there. Kelly, would you say that's kind of how you recall it?
Yeah, I think so. I think the main takeaway was that she didn't, she wanted more guidance on where to actually start, a nuts and bolts answer, not just, do the right thing. It was more like, what do I do when I walk into my office? What's my first step starting this process?
Right. That's kind of what I got. And so we discussed that a little bit afterwards among the three of us, how we might, do that. And then as we hear from the rest of the staff, that I think will help shape things up. And as I think this is going to happen in January, because the staff's pretty busy for all the year-end stuff. And after we hear from all of the other department heads, we'll have a much clearer idea of their needs to make this happen, I guess, in a timely fashion.
Mhm. So just to get a handle on what the flow is going forward and basing it on what's happened so far, you've had a meeting with Parks and Rec staff or just the department head, and the plan is to continue meeting with all the other department heads
Yes, the idea
over the
is,
next month or two, or
yes, to try and meet with all the other department heads in January to really get really everything. What are your anxieties? What's it going to take to get this done? What help do you need getting started? That type of thing. So it was definitely a fact-finding mission on implementation and how can we make this happen and how can we set realistic, achievable goals and markers.
and just again, to close that, is you and Kelly are kind of spearheading that as far as sitting down and having those conversations, or who?
Yes, and Christy was there also. So it was me,
Okay.
Kelly, and Christy that were there. And as it turned out, Parks and Rec was probably a good person to talk to first. I didn't realize that basically her department touched on almost every category there was. And so we got to hear kind of about all the different, categories and what, But like I said, another positive takeaway for me was she actually, some of this is on their radar and they want to do the right thing. It's just, how do we do it now? The hard part.
Right, cool. I see John has his hand up.
Yeah, I just want to comment, Laura, thank you. I appreciate what you said immensely. I chaired parks for 6 years. And yes, they were always very aware of it. And it's a big committee that covers lots of areas. And what encourages me, what you were saying near the end, is that it strikes me that trying to understand the pressures and the lack of direction as to how to move forward from some of these people would be the most positive way that we could move forward with whatever guidelines we come, rather than strictures that say do this, do this, do this. Is saying these are the ideas that need to become, but here's the way to begin a process of thinking about how to expand your thoughts beyond this, because it really has been on the guide for many years in parks, but you come down to massive budget issues, as some of the council members just went through and had a big tour of the guys who drive all the trucks and things like that, and talking about how being able to solidify in one particular kind of truck cuts their labor costs in half and keeps your inventory in place. And you say, we want to move forward, but there's also has to be a balance, that if you take a knee-jerk approach to stepping forward too fast, then suddenly you throw yourself into big money and lack of staffing, and it becomes more a catastrophe than it does a guide. So I think what you're doing is brilliant and beautiful. And if whenever you have these meetings, if you do them in the mornings, I might like to be involved if you don't mind. But I think looking at each person, my guess is most of the cities thinking about this all the time. And what they really just don't have is some guideline as to how to really have someone help push them forward. So thank you very much.
Right, thanks. And Dean.
Yeah, I made it finally. Sorry to be late. The question that always comes up in my mind when we're talking about getting going at this point and having been thinking about it, but now we're going to take action, is the time frames laid out in the resolutions calling for 66% clean and renewable energy use by 2030 and X by 2040. And sort of how do you talk about those things in the context of the process, John, you just talked about? It's sort of an intriguing, an important thing to balance, because it is both urgent and seemingly never quite the most urgent thing that day. But as planets go, it's urgent.
Right.
And so it's trying to figure out how to balance that out. And are we going to really aim at those resolution targets or not?
Well, I do think one thing I can, I guess, say, we can make them aware, as we go, that, hey, Kelly did have a copy of the purchasing policy plan, or the purchasing policy. So we did try and keep it, focused on that and tied to policy. And, my experience is the hardest part is getting started. I mean, we're trying to basically get started, and then the measurement. So it's like, what do you want me to measure? And, there was a little anxiety there about whether, measurement taken out of context. She's like, what about like salt use or something like that? What if, if I end up adding paved path, and so I've actually got more path to keep clear, it might look like my salt use went up. And is that, am I going to be in trouble for that, even though we added X amount of, feet or whatever? So there was some concern that, how am I want to do the right thing. We need to measure it so that you can see that we are working towards this, we are making those changes, and that a knee-jerk reading of the metrics don't make it look like we're not doing anything.
But depending on the measure, the cutting down on the percent of carbon used per mile of snowplow use, we're aiming for no carbon emissions in 2040. So that is a the scary part of that is it might seem so difficult that people throw up their hands and say, we can't do it.
Right, and that's why we
and-
wanted to kind of start with, let's just get the measurement in place. Let's get all
But-
this
But the
stuff,
reality is if
Yeah.
you don't aim for it, you can't do it either.
but we can make them aware that's what we're aiming for. Paralysis, analysis by paralysis by fear is not gonna get us where we need to be.
Yeah.
So let's
But
get,
anyway,
you can get started and then speed it up. We got to get started. So your point is well taken, and our goal is to get them started. And if just doing an inventory is what it takes to get started, then
Sure.
that's what we need to start.
So as interim chair, I'm going to jump in.
I'm
going to
back,
update
actually.
Christie. I'm going to
I know,
update
thank you.
Christie and then hand it back to her. So
Thank you.
basically, we've been talking about the Sustainable Purchasing Policy Implementation Plan since about 7:05, and it's now
Okay.
about 7:20. There are at least 2 additional hands up, and I'll let you decide how rigid you were wanting to follow that hour target, or
Okay.
how much additional time we want to spend on the policy discussion, because
Okay. Okay, thank you. So Dick, we've heard from you, or I'm trying to follow the Robert's rules of letting everyone speak at least once first. So have both of you spoken?
Yes,
Oh, okay, so I'm guessing your hand was up first, Dick, and then John's?
I
That
think so.
was, yep. Okay,
Okay.
just a comment, Laura, you mentioned that the parks person was saying that they didn't know the guidelines. Well, how do you make a decision if electric vehicle is going to cost X% more than a non-electric vehicle? How do they make a decision to go with the electric? And I seem to remember Robert Owen, maybe Robert or Kevin, recommending language for this policy that some kind of metric be put in. Now, the problem is the more prescriptive we get, the more we get boxed in. So I like the idea of being qualitative, of saying that we need to do this, but somehow we need to force the decision back on the deciders that they will or are willing to spend the extra money that it takes to do the decarbonization route. And I don't know that we want to put it specifically in right yet, that if the cost is only 15% more or 20% more, and I think even Robert had some suggestions in the language on that he was mentioning, but somehow we need to get prescriptive enough so that they have comfort that they can say, okay, it's only going to cost 20% more. We're under the guidelines, we can go ahead and do it, rather than that the cost is 50% more. No, we can't do it unless they go to some kind of appeal process or, have somebody else evaluate it. It seems like that's the crux of it. Back on the big issues. An electric chainsaw shouldn't be an issue over buying a gas chainsaw. It might cost a little more, but $100 out of a big budget is not that much. But it's on the bigger items, I think, that the real problem is.
Right. So we did have, in what exists now, and she is going to give us some more feedback, but we do have some stuff in there about on the bigger stuff, you have to use the Falco tool. And we did, in talking with Kylie, part of that was she did mention that, well, what if our budget is set and then we want to do this, and exactly what you're getting at, it costs more. Right now we said, well, first of all, definitely check with Kelly. There might be a grant that covers the difference. I said, and there's already language in there that says if it's a little bit more, like 10, 15% or whatever, that should be considered, and that you should do that. So there is some language that's fairly prescriptive, but again, we didn't want to totally box them in, because sometimes it just does. The big thing was she was worried about operation budget going forward. That's something they can't change. There's only so many people that you can hire and stuff like that. And the resistance wasn't, there wasn't really resistance to doing this. She actually seemed fairly, open to it, and fairly, she wanted to do it and was concerned about doing it, and how do we go about doing this? It was really, all the things we've been kind of talking about. I think she just needed some help as it goes. And that's where Ask Kelly kind of came up, to make it so that she doesn't have to redo all the research. Like, Kelly knows a lot of this stuff. Like, yeah, there's stuff in the IRA, grants that you could get for converting this to that. So I do think there's some language in there that exists for that. And again, it's that balance of let's get started and have some general guidance, but this is what we have to hit because of the policy. And we just try to keep tying it back to the policy.
John,
Yeah, I think this is a cart before the horse issue. Because I think most of these department chairs don't necessarily have the guidance yet to know how to move forward. And they can't change their budgets. I'm sorry, you can't suddenly say it's only 20% more, but their budgets are fixed and they don't control their budgets. And then we sit there and we impose an end guideline and said in 6 years, you're going to be at 100%. We don't even know how to get there. So how in the world can we be imposing these things? Say, in responding to Dean, maybe, to me, I'd much rather see something that said, I want to see you double or triple the amount of savings you have over the next period of time, rather than putting some absolute, because we don't really know how to get there yet. And I think it's a false thing to throw this onus on them when they really don't even quite know how to start, but they want to start and they want to do it. And I think we could do much better if we just encouraged them to double, triple, quadruple what they're doing, rather than having some artificial guideline that forces them to have to do, because I think they want to do it anyways. I don't think the government, the people I know, are not sitting there and says, this is stupid, I don't want to do any of this, I don't want anything to do with it. They need help and guidance, they don't need threats. So I just think we should take an approach that encourages rather than becomes onerous. So enough said, I guess.
I'll just quickly jump in that I'll reiterate what I just heard and what Laura said, that I did feel, and this is only one department head, we still have 3 more. Kylie was very open to this. What she was worried about was trying to comply with the huge policy that's still a draft and that's really thick. But she is already doing things that came out, that she's very interested in this. So the intent and the will is there. Does she have some resistance within her ranks? Yeah, but she's working, and we will help her, and she's working to mitigate that. For sure. So we had Dean next and then John.
Right.
Or
Right.
Kermit, did you have your hand up?
Who took my hand down?
I didn't take your hand down.
Who did that? I thought I was next.
You are,
After
but then, okay. Go
I think it
ahead.
was Kermit, then Dean, then John.
Okay.
So yes, I agree completely with the enabling strategy rather than the punitive strategy, and towards that and are complementary to that, I think what I'm imagining the staff wants is to know that the management chain and the city council have their backs for making these decisions in favor of sustainable purchases that may incur slightly more or maybe significantly more easily measurable upfront costs that are offset by operational savings or offset by a consideration of the impact on the environment that doing it the old way has versus doing it with a cleaner energy or cleaner supply chain. So I guess I would add that as something that we need to see happen somehow, make sure that the city administration, the upper the chain of command, so to speak, and the council in particular are going to look at these kind of decisions and these kind of impacts with a judicious and supportive lens or eye. And I don't know what that takes to make sure that happens, but that's what if I were in any of these department head shoes juggling the different conflicting demands, I'd want to know that I was not going to be punished for doing the right thing, that somebody would recognize why the budget is a little high or why this is taking a little longer because we're implementing this new approach to things. The other thought I'll just add, and this is something that I remember Joe Parisi sharing at a council meeting. He was briefing the city council about just county developments and actions. And essentially it's like, he has flipped the decision-making process on its head. He's not saying, well, you got to justify doing the sustainable thing. He's saying, okay, you have to justify doing the old thing, the fossil fuel thing, the carbon intensive thing. And so, and saying if there is a preferential option in any approvals for doing it, what we would like to see is the right way. And so to whatever extent we can incorporate that also into the policy or into the implementation, I think that would have a positive effect as well.
That is in there, just to reply to that for you, that we did try and do that where there is a line that says, if I didn't choose the electric, then, you know, what's my explanation for that?
What's
So
right.
That just to answer your question, that
Yeah.
is already in there. And I think that she got that, okay, that we're
Good,
going for
yeah.
this first. And so yes, that's being addressed, I think.
Yeah. And if it's just one line, then it might be something put in bold, 14 point or something to make the line make an impression. Anyways, enough
Okay,
said. Thank
Dean.
you.
Oh, you're on mute, Dean.
Thank you. Two quick things. One is the discussion. We had a discussion from the community working group of 350.org with Kylie after she had taken her position. And she had very little knowledge of what we were talking about the resolutions for 2030 and 2040 and all that. But she has done remarkably well in catching up with this stuff. And if you look at what she's put through the procurement process and recommended buying, many of them are much greener options than have been used in the past. So bringing up the discussion with her already had good effects. And so I'm happy about that. I am also just trying to figure out what a resolution of the council in 2018 means, if anything, other than, gee, we'd really like you to go for it. But if you put down 66% in 2030 and 100% in 2040, does it mean anything, or does it actually mean what the subsequent mayor and council people think about it? You know, it doesn't have the power of law, right?
No.
It doesn't have the power of,
Yeah.
It's a resolution that we should really go for it by people who are no longer in office.
Mhm.
John, do
Is
you want
that
to
right?
comment? Do you want to comment, John?
Is that, yeah.
Yeah, I think, I wasn't even born in 2018, so I don't know what they were thinking. I think the message was, this is a time when everybody's saying we've got to do something. And everybody in the world that I know, the politicians were throwing out deadlines and this, we're going to accomplish this. I think the message that they were trying to convey, that I still hear today very strongly, is we really need to do everything we can to make this work. I will share, it was one of the last council meetings when I shared the previous meeting we had and said that we're working hard and got some really good ideas with this strategic plan, this on how to do it. And everybody in the council was excited and said, this is great. This is exactly what we need. So I think you've got the council is behind your back. I don't think anybody's wedded to those numbers and those percentages, but I think they want to see change. I mean, along the lines, I'm hearing this discussion and being a sort of a newbie on the committee. Has anybody thought about going to each of these departments to say, when we put together, as part of our putting together a plan, can you come up with your own strategy as how you think you might accomplish this? And therefore we could build some of our guidance built on what they think they're doing. And I think that would be perhaps a very, interesting way, if not done already, to look
That's
at us,
well
us
heard.
not ordaining, but looking at them and building together their expertise to come up with a plan.
Yeah, that is well heard, and that's the goal, actually, and that
Okay.
was the start of it today.
Yeah.
So Kelly, why don't you comment?
Oh, I just wanted to bring up, and this is for John, because you're newer to the committee.
Yeah.
We do have an energy plan that was specifically written as an answer or as a guide roadmap for the 2018 resolution. And that plan is, I think it's been very useful. We've almost accomplished everything in the plan. So it's almost like we need a plan 2.0.
Okay. Is that available online where I can grab a copy of
Yeah,
that?
it's on the sustainability website.
I should see it.
I'll send everyone a
Okay.
link. I think I hear a lot like, well,
All
we
right.
need a plan, and like we do have that plan, and I think it was a good plan, and it does lay out the case
Okay.
for transitioning the fleet and energy efficiency and decarbonization and that kind of stuff with actual numbers,
Great,
cost
great.
estimates, and targets.
Okay.
We are on track to meet the numbers in the resolution. We're on track right now. I think the 2030 is going to be that's a huge leap to go to 66% renewable energy by 2030.
Yeah.
So it is a critical time, but we're on track. I think when we really talk over and over and over about the resolution and the percentages, it's great because everyone needs to know there's community and city goals, but it's hard for staff to know where to start to meet those, to get to those thresholds. And we have the plan, which has been helpful, and we have our comprehensive plan and the sustainability plan. But I don't know, sometimes I wonder, like, maybe we need to always get those goals out there, but the goals don't tell you how to do it. It's really the devil's in the detail of these types of things, the purchasing plan. You can't just keep telling staff, you got to meet this threshold goal. You got to meet the 66%. After a while, it's just kind of like, yeah, but where do I start?
That's why I think it's dangerous. If I could just jump in for a second. With those numbers, every plan can be changed and should be changed. And just because there was a resolution in 2018 that set goals doesn't mean we can't and shouldn't those goals in light of what we have accomplished, and maybe then reset goals based on the successes we've had, but that give a new realistic target. I'm certainly not against that either, and looking at the council as that possibility of given data to say we've done incredible things, but we need to change that number.
I think we could make it more stringent. I really think we can.
But yeah, whatever.
Yeah, I think if anything, we need to move it up and do it faster and quicker. But I think we can do it. I think I want people to feel like excited and to feel like this is very possible. It's not just pie in the sky possible. It's the way everyone is moving forward by leaps and bounds. And now we have all this money from the federal government. So I absolutely think it's possible.
Great.
I'm just going to reiterate today that the meeting, was left on such a positive note. So like the meeting accomplished what we wanted, which was let's work collaboratively with you to move forward. This is what our approach is not, and I'm firm on this. And I told Brian this before he sort of gave the green light. I mean, he knew we could have done it anyway, but before he sort of talked to the staff about this, what I said was, I don't want these meetings to be like disciplinary and say, hey, you should have been doing this the whole time. I said, absolutely not. That is not the right approach. The approach is, we have this, but we need to learn from you and work collaboratively with you. And that is the platform we are moving forward on.
I say bravo, thank you.
Dean, Laura.
Yeah, actually, Kelly stole my thunder on that one.
Okay.
So I'll throw her my
Laura,
hand.
do you have more?
I was just going to say that, I mean, basically what you just said, and that I felt like that just when we met with Kylie, I think that the meeting actually relieved some anxiety.
Yes.
I think that she was like, oh, okay, you want to work with us and you understand our needs and our concerns, and that we are trying. So I actually, to go along with Kelly, I think that it did end pretty positive, and it did end like, we can do this, and now I've got more ideas to look and here. Okay, I can do that. I can get started. So, I mean, if every, a city head left with, yeah, okay, I got that. And I asked her, I said, I put these questions in trying to think like you, and which ones would help meet with our metrics and stuff. She offered to go through it again. I said, when you go through, I'm happy to cut, add, whatever. Tell me how best to do that. So she was made very well aware that this is a collaborative effort and that we need their input, and we recognize that they're doing, what they can, and they really are trying. So I think it was very positive and supportive, and anxiety releasing on theirs in a good way. That they know the numbers, they know what they have to do, but it's a little anxiety building to think, how do I get there? I don't know what to do. So
John, do you have more? Do you have more, John?
No, it's great.
Okay.
It's a great
Okay.
conversation. So,
Okay, good.
but
Kelly,
we
your
also
hand-
need to go, right?
Yeah. Kelly, your hand is still up. Do you have more? Okay, we are gonna wrap this up. So, is that good? Is everybody good with this agenda item for now? We'll have more next month. Okay. Green Team just had 2 quick things. Why don't we just email those out, Kelly, after, in the interest of time? Good Neighbor Festival's a ways away. I don't know that we have to cover that tonight. We could, but let's skip it. Sustainable Middleton Awards, anything quick that we need to talk about, or, just a reminder about it?
Yes, I'm wondering about the launch of the Sustainable Middleton Awards. I haven't seen anything in the Middleton Times Tribune. I haven't seen anything on my emails. Is anything out there?
My neighbor got something from the city and sent it to me and said, we should apply for the compost we're doing, composting, because I compost her veggies too. And I said, I can't, I'm the judge.
Right.
Something was sent out.
You win.
Yeah. Laura.
I just want to say that I got that, like, if you're on the certain list, I'm on several lists, and one of them, it was sent out on the city list. So anybody who's like signed up, I don't know which one it was, but communications did send it out through city lists. But I haven't seen it in the paper or anything like that.
Mhm.
Okay, I used to get those, but I didn't get anything.
Our lists, and this is something I noticed working on something else, there are multiple sustainability related email lists. So I think that that's more of a, like, the new communication director who has to kind of clean up everything. He probably has to also combine some of these lists. I signed up for both of them as soon as I got, on this committee, and then a bunch of others. So I'm not sure which list it came through, but if you're only on one, it probably went out on the other, is what I would say if you didn't get it. There's, like I said, I poured
Right.
through, we got like 100 and some lists. It probably should be condensed.
Kelly, could we work offline with Deb and Dick about this? Okay. All right. You know what? We went over an hour, but for this group, 7:44, I think is a record. So I think we should all be proud of that. Apologies about the 1 hour. Apologies, I had to leave for a little bit, but do we have a motion to adjourn?
So
Move to
moved.
adjourn.
Kelly, one more, you have more?
Deb, did you want to talk tonight about Sustainable You, or push that to the next
Oh.
week?
I did, because
Go ahead, Deb. Sorry about that.
okay, so reading Kelly's report gave me a lot of ideas about what we could have for talks in Sustainable You. So David Drake, for one, managing habitat to benefit urban wildlife. I think that would be a perfect topic. Celebrate Sustainable Middleton. Kelly was like, how do we get the word out? Well, let's have Kelly as a Sustainable You speaker and talk about all the things we're doing. Talk on sustainable building in Middleton. Have have Kathleen Slattery Moshkow. I was just out at Bell Farms today, and it's really an amazing development that they're planning. So, and then finally, there was a letter that went out, and this, I can't remember who wrote the letter, but she said in there that the DOT said by 2050, 31% of Wisconsin will have EVs registered. That's not very many. That's only a third of the cars in the state. And so I thought maybe for the last Sustainable You want to buy an EV, what to know, and have somebody talk about that. So anyway, I have two that are already scheduled for Kathy Kunz to come in and talk about the IRA for homeowners and the IRA for businesses and nonprofits. So with those 4 suggestions, maybe I should ask if anybody wants to be on a subcommittee for Sustainable You and work on this, or if you all like those ideas, I could just move forward and get them scheduled and try to get
Yeah.
speakers, or however you want to do it. But
I love the ideas. I think you should move forward with them, personally.
I
I can,
concur.
Me
I'll be
too.
on any subcommittee.
who said that?
Kelly, she's the best subcommittee person there is.
Oh, Kelly said that. All right, Kelly on subcommittee. Okay. Anybody else? I don't hear you. Okay, I've got Kelly. All right. And then if anybody knows who would be great to ask to come talk about EV cars, as a umbrella of all the kinds of EV cars, rather than just a particular company that has EV cars, let me know, because I don't know somebody like that.
Maybe Kathy Kunz or something.
I'd recommend Renew Wisconsin. They have a staff person who's one of his portfolio items is EV popularization and distribution.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Francisco Sayu.
Francisco, thank you.
Yeah,
What's
he's
his name?
great. Francisco Sayu. His last name spelled S-A-Y-U. And
Yep.
he also does is like the executive director for Bike Equity. He's really cool. And then
Yep.
so he'd be one person, and then if you did like more than one speaker, you could also get Leah Sampson Samuel from
MG&E.
MG&E. She's great. I mean, she works at MG&E and she's working on the inside, but she's a mechanical engineer too. She's amazing.
Her first name is Sampson?
Leah.
Leah.
Oh, Leah Sampson
Yeah.
Samuel?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. That makes more sense.
Okay, good. Well, thank you, Deb. Are you okay if we move forward? Okay. Thank you, everyone. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
I'll move again. To adjourn.
Second?
So moved.
Yep.
I was gonna say, do people want to stay on? Okay, do
No,
we
no,
have a
I
vote?
second, I third.
Okay. Do we have a vote? All in favor?
Uh,
Aye.
Okay. Meeting adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Happy holidays to
Thank you all,
everyone.
yeah.
Holidays.
Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, etc., etc.
Bye-bye.
All right.